Hello out there, and welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com. I'm Caleb, joined by Alan, and this is our off-season weekly podcast. And then during football season, obviously, we do about 2 or more, depending on what's going on per week. So let's talk a little recruiting, and then we actually do have some football to talk about. Spring practice is just around the corner. As far as recruiting goes, I don't have a ton of updates because, like I mentioned last week, the dead period just ended, and then South Carolina was on spring break. So there weren't going to be any visitors to an empty campus. But I am starting to get a list of visitors coming in the end of the month in April. We'll start updating GamecockScoop.com and the Insiders Forum on all of that. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it right now. There was a basketball note, 2024 5-star guard Cam Scott was on campus for the win over Georgia, the senior day win last week. So that's always good news. My feel right there is it's going to be really hard to get him to stay home. Most of the time I've heard him talking. It's been praising Auburn and Bruce Pearl and all those sorts of things. But I mean, it's good that he's still showing up. Obviously he's from Lexington, so he's right down the street. So maybe you can get that home pull angle. And also I think it's probably gotten a little easier because Gigi Jackson has finished the season so strongly. I think if that would have completely gone off the rails, it would have made it that much more difficult because it's very easy to negatively recruit. Look what happened when the 5-star in-state guy stayed home. But it seems like that's kind of corrected itself in a lot of ways. So, yeah, we'll keep you posted on that. It doesn't sound like he's like about to make a decision tomorrow or anything. So still some time there. Another quick basketball recruiting note. The transfer portal window is about to open. I know that Lamont Paris is already talking to some folks that season have ended. A guy from the Citadel, a guy from Wofford. We'll obviously keep you in the loop as those materialize into something more stable. And then, yeah, when the actual portal window opens, it's going to be kind of crazy because a lot of schools will still be playing in their tournaments. So obviously anyone on those teams, like a backup or whatever, is probably not going to jump ship in the middle of a tournament run. So it'll be kind of a weird
it's
window.
Going to be, you've got Selection Sunday on Sunday night. They'll be down to 68 teams in, and I guess also 32 in the NIT. Although guys have more likely to jump during that. And then as teams get knocked off the board, as the tournament starts, as it goes on, you're going to see more and more names pop up in the portal as more and more teams get eliminated. So just keep an eye on that through next week and the week after. Like Caleb said, some of the guys from the SoCon, that conference tournament's already over. So everybody but, I guess, Furman, those guys can go in the portal now. They're having an impact their seasons. It's going to just be a weird kind of trickles thing as these next couple of weeks go on.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in basketball, but I'm not saying that you can't pull any of those SoCon guys. Obviously, Hayden Brown worked out pretty well this year, but you're going to need to get some splashier names, I think, if this is going to turn around within a season. Some guys that have played some Power 5 basketball or Power 6 in basketball, I guess. But but we'll talk about that when we get to basketball here in a second. Let's talk football a little bit. So a couple things are going on in the football world as everything slowly starts to wake back up. February was a little bit sleepy for football, which honestly kind of nice for a minute. But spring football is right around the corner. I know last week you got to talk to all the transfers and Shane Beamer and kind of a spring preview / transfer press conference. Anything kind of notable come out of that?
Yeah, a couple injury updates that I think you always have to start with. Beamer said they don't expect Tonka Hemingway or Kason Henry, so that's a defensive tackle and an offensive tackle, to be available for spring ball. He said both guys had surgery last month, didn't specify what, but he said he expects them to both to be ready for summer workouts. He said Mo Kaba and Jordan Strawn, those are, of course, a linebacker, defensive end who tore their ACLs in week 2 last year. So they shouldn't do much in spring ball, but the rehab is going great. And then another guy who got hurt in the middle of last year and missed the season, David Spalding. Beamer said he is, quote, more likely to be in spring ball than Kaba or Strawn, but he wouldn't say for sure either way. And then since we last were on here, Lavoisier Carroll, running back, retired from football. So that running back room's looking pretty thin now.
Yeah, we were just like looking at the roster right before this started and trying to figure out who is on scholarship at the running back position. So you got Mario Anderson, of course, who's coming up from Newberry. He'll be a one and done redshirt senior graduate transfer. And you have Juju McDowell, obviously. And then we discovered that Dante Turbo Miller is also still on the roster. I think he was on scholarship. But obviously he's just been playing special teams primarily. So yeah, pretty thin in that running back room.
That football transfer portal opens back up on May 1st. It's a 15-day window, 1st through the 15th. They're going to need a running back in the portal. I think that kind of goes without saying at this point.
Yeah, and we're expecting that to be a target. We're expecting edge to be a target. Although getting Strawn back will go a long way there. Did you say that Terrell Dawkins is supposed to be back? I'm sorry. I kind of missed that.
I believe he is supposed to be. That's a weird one, too, though. That's another guy where I think this program kind of liked him coming in, and the wheels just never got spinning last year because of how often he was hurt. I think he got hurt in week 3 or between weeks 3 and 4. It was a practice injury, if I'm not mistaken, and he just never really got back into it. But that's a guy where, yeah, if you can get a healthy Terrell Dawkins to play, I don't know, 50 snaps a game, 40. That might be ambitious, but something like that next year. I do think that changes your equation, but you still need depth at that position.
Yeah, definitely. Those of you that don't know who he was because he didn't really play last year,
yeah, exactly.
He led NC State in sacks as a freshman before he got injured, but he hasn't really bounced back fully since then. So it's kind of unclear on if that is something that he can ever fully be back to that level on or not. If he could, obviously that solves a lot of issues, but that's a pretty big if. Speaking of Mokaba, tomorrow, Pauline is doing a exclusive interview with Mokaba. It's Mokaba Week on GamecockScoop.com. Go check out some of his merch. He has like a brand that he sells t-shirts and all that sort of stuff on. If you check out Gamecock Scoop on Instagram and on Twitter, we put links to all of that stuff in the last couple of days. So yeah, really excited to hear more about his recovery of injury. And then the cool thing with these interviews that Pauline does is we try to give you a little bit of insight of who these players are off the field. I think that is actually the working title for the series that we've been doing. We started with Marcellus Dial after the Clemson game, but I think it'll be, Gamecock Scoop off the field, these little interviews with the players. So that's something to look forward to tomorrow. All right, let's talk a little bit more football. So the NFL Combine was this past weekend. I did a full breakdown yesterday on GamecockScoop.com that you can check out. Some notable notes. Cam Smith, he did well. Like, he didn't do anything to hurt his position. Everything I've seen, he's the 5th or 6th ranked cornerback in this class. That would still put him at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. So it's possible. A lot of the mocks I'm seeing seem to skew more beginning of the second round, but it is possible you'll hear him on that first draft night. Either way, he should be in good position. Probably the guy that did the most for his draft stock this past weekend was Darius Rush, who actually he ran a 4.43 and he clocked like the 3rd fastest combine time for cornerbacks. One important thing to keep in mind with Darius Rush is he's got like a prototypical NFL corner body, but he's only been playing corner for 2 years. He came in as a wide receiver. So I think he has worked his way into an NFL team taking a chance on his upside, because I think he got better every year as a DB. And then he put up pretty insane numbers at the combine. He's already got that body type built in. I don't know that he's, worked his way all the way up to Cam Smith tier, but I think he
I
probably
think
is
he hears his
likely
name
in the
called
middle
on. Not that
rounds.
I'm a draft expert. I don't work for an NFL team, but I think you hear his name called on day 2. That'd be the
Yeah.
second or the third round. Which, when you juxtapose that to where you thought he might have gone before last season, which was not drafted at all / end of day 3. I mean, he had a heck of a season last year. He was a huge part of that defense. That's just a success story. Is another way to put it. It's great for him. Switching positions in the middle of college, playing well at that position, and now he's made himself some money for sure between the combine, his season, his senior bowl performance, and he's got a pro day next week too. Which next Monday in Columbia, you've got Rush, Smith, and everybody else who's NFL eligible to be doing workouts in Columbia with NFL scouts coming.
Yeah, and I don't have the actual numbers pulled up in front of me, but a couple other things I remember noting. Zach Pickens didn't do quite as good on the bench press, which is one of the few strength things that they measure. I think he did like 22 reps, which was 15th or so for the DT position. But Javon Gwynn did 34 reps, which was like third for O-line. So, and obviously that's an important movement for O-line. It seems like they're still projecting him as sort of a backup offensive lineman, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he played his way to being a starter in the NFL, mostly just because of his work ethic, his leadership ability, and that strength. Although I think he's maybe slightly slower than, you know, prototypical starters in the NFL. Either way, he should get drafted. Pretty much all of them should get drafted. Everyone that participated in the combine, except for maybe Jalen Brooks, will be on the borderline. He ran the slowest.
His time was
ran the slowest 40 time of wide receivers.
Ooh.
I mean, he looked good in like catching drills and stuff, which that is his strength, right? He's made some pretty incredible catches through his career at South Carolina. But it's going to be tough. He's probably going to have to go the undrafted free agent route and work his way through. But
and then you got a handful of guys who were not invited to the combine who are also going to be participating in pro day next week. Your guys, your Nate Atkins, Christian Beal-Smith, Sherrod Green. He wasn't at the combine, was he?
No.
Yeah, so he's doing pro day workouts next Monday here. Devontae Reed, just see if anything pops, and have some NFL people here on Monday.
Yeah,
football right now. Obviously, we're going to keep you guys all updated on everything. GamecockScoop.com. Spring ball starts the day after pro day next week. That is March 14th. That is a 14 practices plus a spring game circuit. You got 3 practices a week starting March 14th all the way through to the spring game, the Garnet and Black game, which is going to be April 15th at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's a night game, prime time. That's something the program did last year. And they're working it into a home softball series. There's some other events on campus that weekend. Big Gamecock weekend, I believe they're calling it. So stay in touch with everything going on with the football. It is going to be interesting next week, kind of just looking at that pro day, that kind of situation. You never know if a guy could pop like that. It's for the combine guys, it's really more of a second win, second opportunity. The guys who weren't invited to the combine, like we were just talking about, that's kind of their one chance with NFL scouts, NFL teams, sometimes even NFL GMs in the building to make an impact. I don't know if you're going to see a guy like, I don't know, Devontae Reed have a pop and maybe slide to the 7th round, whatever. Sherrod Green coming off 2 knee injuries. I don't know if an NFL team would necessarily take a chance on that. But yeah, it's kind of that time. We're getting into spring ball. And then after spring ball, that's when your transfer portal is going to open again. We do think South Carolina is going to need running back and edge. There's still some questions about the rest of the quarterback room after Spencer Rattler and Luke Doty. Not sure who that 3rd quarterback is going to be, who that 4th quarterback is going to be, where that leaves the rest of them, especially with a guy like Lenora Sellers coming into the portal. E3, who's QB4? What does that mean for people who aren't QB3 and 4 with the portal reopening in May? And I don't know, do you get any Lenora Sellers action?
Yeah. And the interest, I mean, like, I don't know if you've seen some of the winter workout stuff, but Lenora Sellers just like squatted 500 something pounds. He went up 150 pounds in a few months or whatever. So his potential is through the roof. It's going to be really interesting to see how they utilize him, if they try to utilize him at all as a freshman in like a wildcat sort of scenario. I mean, you still got DeCarrion Joyner too, so that'll be really, really interesting. I think I'm most excited to see the edge position, the newcomers primarily. Well, newcomer, I guess, at the edge position. Did you update the suspensions, by the way? Because I know that Shane Beamer did mention.
Oh, yeah. He just said those guys are not currently with the team. That would be Montague Rames, Cameron Upshaw, and Anthony Rose, who, of course, were, I guess, two of them got arrested and one didn't on February 2nd, January 31st, something like that. Beamer said they're not with the team still. Not going to be. I can pull up the exact quote. But
yeah. No, that's fine. So yeah, I would have said Rames, obviously, but he won't be there.
Sorry, they're still part of our team. They're still not part of our team. Still suspended. None of the three are currently with us. We don't anticipate them being back with us at any point in the near future. That's Beamer as of 6 days ago.
There you go. I would say the other edge players, though, Desmond Umeozulu, I'm looking to see how he develops. We just talked about Terrell Dawkins. I mean, if he is healthy and out there, that would be great to kind of see how he's slotting in right now. And then you got Tyreek Johnson and Brian Thomas Jr., who are going to be relied upon pretty much no matter what, in a way that they have not been relied upon up until this point. Tyreek Johnson has the right size to be a starter edge. 6'3", 270 is what he's listed on the spring roster right now. But he never really has fully put it together, at least enough to compete into a sizable role there. If he's going to turn it on, now would be a really good time. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see the edge position. What else are you looking for as we head to spring?
Corner, really. You're losing. We just talked about it with the combine stuff. You're losing Cam Smith. You're losing Darius Rush. Marcellus Dial is going to be cornerback one. Who else is playing? How do they look? Especially because I think if you're just talking about matchups, you definitely would skew. If you're watching corner versus receiver on this team, you're definitely skewing receiver, right? In terms of scrimmages, practices, whatever. How does a guy like O'Donnell Fortune look trying to cover, I don't know, Trey Knox? You know what I mean? Like, if you assume it doesn't work like this, they move guys around. But if you're thinking about a spring game scenario where you've got probably Marcellus Dial and Antoine Wells 1v1, and then you're looking at, I don't know, Fortune and Knox, like, I don't really, you don't have Anthony Rose anymore. That was the guy who played the bowl game and you kind of thought was sneaking up your cornerback depth chart a little bit. Who else is filling in there? Kawhi Banks, he played most of them special teams last year, but is that a guy that's going to get snaps at corner this year? A healthy David Spalding helps, but he's probably going to play nickel more, especially with Cam Smith gone now. They were kind of splitting that last year before Spalding got hurt. Who's playing corner?
Yeah, you also got Keenan Nelson Jr., who's possibly going to get some play there. And then, yeah, I mean, are you keeping Emin Wari and DQ Smith both at safety? Is it possible that you're going to move those guys around at all? I mean, I feel like
I wouldn't mess with that.
Yeah, they're pretty much going to be a really good force back there, I think. But and then, yeah, you got, I mean, really the whole there's a lot of areas on defense that are going to be interesting to see how they play out, right? You got Grayson Howard coming in. You got Muhammad Kaba that we spoke about earlier coming back from an injury. You got Stone Blanton, who we think still has upside at linebacker, but didn't necessarily fully perform the way you would have wanted as a freshman. And then you have a transfer from Auburn. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head right now.
I'm thinking of Jaron Willis.
That's it. Jaron Willis. Yeah. Oh, you're right. Ole Miss, who was rated highly out of high school, but pretty much sat behind some better older players at Ole Miss last year. So yeah, the linebacker position, and then we talked about it at the beginning, but the running back room is, I mean, I guess there's not much to watch except for how Mario Anderson performs with this step up. Does he look like he can be an every down back? or at least heavily relied upon, 50-50 split with Juju McDowell, whatever.
I don't think
But
you even do that, honestly.
yeah.
I don't. These are conversations to be had through spring ball in the summer, but Juju McDowell at his size, I don't think is even a 50% or a 50% of the carries running back in the SEC. I just don't. At least not between the tackles.
Yeah, it would be tough. I mean, you think of like examples of someone that size that has made it work before. Like I would think back to like what Dexter McCluster
Yeah,
at
that's a
Ole
good
Miss.
one.
But again, he was kind of a one tackle down, and he's going down. If he can find a hole, obviously.
Jaquiz Rogers, I think he was at Oregon State. He made the NFL. I think 5'6". That's another one, but
yeah. So it's gonna be tough, but like I said, we think that they'll probably go after running back in the portal. If there are any edges available, they'll go after edge in the portal. We also have talked about the idea that Tonka Hemingway could spend a little bit more time on the edge this season.
He's hurt though.
Yeah, we won't see it in the spring, obviously, but so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading some of those practice reports. We posted the full schedule on GamecockScoop.com earlier this week, but you have pretty steady media availability. Obviously, some of the women's basketball stuff might interfere a little bit, but we'll have plenty of coverage on GamecockScoop.com for that. Any other like questions or things you're looking forward to for spring?
Looking forward to seeing Kai Kroger punt, but that's kind of a given.
Always looking forward to see Kai Kroger throw. You know.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the in-season sports real quick. So men's basketball, of course, ended their regular season with an SEC home win. First one of the season. Took 11 tries, 12 tries, however many it was. But they got one. Played a pretty complete game against Georgia. Like I said, Cam Scott got to see that. And they played their way into the same role that they were going to be in either way, which is a game against
the 12 seed against Ole Miss. Yeah. Got the home jerseys. You would have been 13 if you'd lost. Got to wear those road jerseys tonight. But they got the home jerseys for this game tonight. Or they should.
That's right. Although, if you look over the course of the season, maybe the road jerseys would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
So that'll be here in just under 4 hours, 6 o'clock tip Eastern for that one. We'll have coverage on that on GamecocksScoop.com. We expect that they could win this one. I think that would be a nice little, thumbs up on the end of the season. But then they would be slotted to play Tennessee tomorrow, which if the first two games are any
I think I know how that's going to go.
It hasn't gone particularly well for them against the Vols this year. So whatever, let's say they win one and get knocked out, or they lose tonight and get knocked out. That's fine. The season went about how we expected, and probably maybe had a couple more higher points than we were expecting.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to look at it strictly in projection terms, they did beat that. They were predicted to finish last in the SEC. They were not last. They were not even second last. They finished 12th out of 14, which no one's giving you a gold star for that. You're not raising a banner in CLA for finishing 12th in a 14-team league. But yeah, the highs is the main thing. You beat Clemson. You beat Kentucky. You took Alabama to overtime. And I think the main thing beyond just high points, you got better as the year went on, and even more so individually. Jacoby Wright is a better basketball player than he was in November. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Zachary Davis came in as a freshman, didn't know what to expect. He's a better basketball player now than he was in November. Chico Carter Jr. got hurt, and that sucks. He didn't play the last month-ish, but he was trending upwards. I think we would all agree. And that's a good sign for Lamont Paris. That's not going to be enough by itself. They're going to have the portal like we were talking about. But this team is better than it was in November. I don't really know what more you were looking for out of this roster this season.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if they win tonight, they will have won 4 of their last 8 SEC games. So
that's
played 500.
They started 1-11. They got to 4-14. So yeah, 3-3. They'd be 4-7. They'd be 4-3 in the last, and then be 4-8. They lose tomorrow, but
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's progress, especially with the 1-11 start. The real question though is what's next? Maybe is there a world where you see Gigi Jackson sticking around, or is he off to the NBA?
It's next week's problem.
Right.
That portal opens Monday. I don't think he's going to portal. He could.
No,
I also don't expect him back here. NBA. So I think he's going to the NBA. We talked about it last week. There's no need to belabor the point. There's actual information to talk about, but He's still a first-round pick, I think. I would expect him gone, but we'll know for sure at some point, maybe next week, as early as next week, possibly.
Yeah, if somehow you get him back, which I do think there are some arguments to be made that he could improve his draft stock to a lottery pick. He would mature one more year, become even more of a local legend, whatever. But if you somehow get him back, then your starting blocks for next year are much better than they were going into this year. But I think either way, you're gonna have to hit the portal. You don't.
No question.
You have Colin Murray Boyles and
Arden
Conyers coming in. They are fine. It's kind of similar to the freshmen that came in this year. I think Braden Davis proved that he can play in the SEC at this
Zachary
level.
Davis, you're thinking football again.
I know. I get them confused every time. Zachary Davis.
Two freshman Davises the programs right
now. And Daniel Hankins Sanford,
did not
jury's
play much.
Still out. Jury's still out on him. But either way, I think you're going to have to hit the portal. I think you have to hit the portal harder than you did last year, or more successfully than you did last year. Like I said, right now they're looking at the SoCon, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be the end all be all of what they look at. I think you get Michi Jack Johnson back. That'd be great. I think you get a Brima Deba back from
Forgot
injury.
about that. Yeah, it's a good point. Another ball handler.
He was expected to be another lengthy guy that's got a good bit of variance on offense. Honestly, I think he would have made a pretty big difference this year. So if you get him back, Jacoby Wright, like you said, Josh Gray, I thought played much better down the stretch of the season. He's still got some room to grow, but that's some decent building blocks. But I still think there's no way that you have much better success next season.
No, you need more. You need more talent. It's kind of not to make it too obvious. You need more talent. It is what it is.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to project much about next year, other than the guys we know, until we know how that portal is going to shake out. So stay tuned on GamecocksCoop.com for any updates on portal players. But yeah, for now, I think we can say like Lamont Paris has shown proof of concept that he can coach a team to get better over the course of a season, which is good. But we still don't know about the recruiting and bringing in portal players in this era to actually compete year in and year out in the SEC.
Yeah, and that's about all I had on men's basketball. See how it goes tonight/tomorrow afternoon. I expect the season to be over within the next 36 hours. I think all of us do. But a season that will not be over in the next 36 hours, but you're hoping within the next 36 days. The women's basketball team is 32-0 now.
Yeah, they got the SEC tournament, which eluded them last year. That was, you were there in Greenville. What was the experience like?
First of all, open locker rooms are back, and that's the best. I know they're back for the men's tournament too. I'm not there. Just being able to actually talk more about that, talk to players, you can talk to whoever you want. If you're subscribed to the website, I've got quotes from almost everybody after all three games. About the games on the Insiders Forum. If you're not subscribed, you want to hear from your favorite player who doesn't normally talk about a game, I probably have a quote from them after all three of those games this weekend, or at least one of them. So definitely subscribe to that if you want to hear from your favorite player. This team just knows how to win. It was kind of the thing that struck me on Sunday, especially. That title game was a little bit of a wonky first 2.5 quarters. It was a kind of a flatline start. They went up by 12. Tennessee cut it back to 3. You're thinking, oh, here we go again. They blew a 13-point lead last year in the SEC title game. This team just knows how to win. Steady the ship, gather yourselves, figure out what's not working. I thought the main thing was Tennessee's Jordan Horston, big scoring forward, had 14 points in the first half and then 0 in the third quarter and didn't score until there were 2 minutes left in the game. Figure out what's beating you. The other team's best players, or one of their best players, is doing something inside. She was getting looks, make an adjustment, kill the game. That was my biggest takeaway from Sunday. This team just keeps finding ways to do that. The in-game adjustments were good again. That's no surprise from Dawn Staley. And they just figure out a way to do what they have, which is be the better team and win.
Yeah, I'm looking. Do you know when the actual bracket gets announced? Is it this
8 o'clock
Sunday?
Sunday night.
Yeah. I'm looking at the latest bracketology. It's really not that much different than what I gave you last week. South Carolina is expected to be the top seed in Greenville 1, Utah number 2 seed. Indiana would be Greenville 2, so they would not face each other until
A title game is what that
a
would be.
title game.
Yeah.
So Stanford would be the number 1 seed on the other Final Four bracket, and then right now Virginia Tech is actually the other 1 seed.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I guess if you're kind of talking about what are you watching for as a South Carolina fan on Sunday night when that bracket comes out, who's the other 1 seed on your side of the bracket, that fourth 1 seed? I'm working on the assumption they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. I think that's safe.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah.
Virginia Tech won the ACC tournament. They were kind of on that 2 line most of the season, but they've gotten hot lately. Did they slip to 1? I know you said that projection has them there. Could UConn get that last 1 seed after kind of getting healthy and now they just won the Big East tournament? I know eye test matters a lot, and they've looked better since they've gotten players back from injury, even if their resume doesn't have that for the whole year. I'm kind of wondering. I'm wondering who's your 1 seed on the other side, because that's your Final Four matchup or one of your possible ones. Who's the 2 seed in your region, because that's your Elite Eight matchup or a possible one again. And I think I'm also looking at, obviously you want to know who your first opponents are. You see a 16 seed there, probably a play-in game again situation like last year. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And then keep an eye on where Stanford is, because as I've said on here before, I truly think this team's either winning the national title or losing to Stanford somewhere. That's the only team I've seen that I think can beat them and has outplayed them this year. So you want to see where, and if you're South Carolina, you want Stanford right where they are in that projection, a 1 seed, other side of the bracket, can't see until the national title game.
Well, no, right now in the projection, they would be the Final Four matchup. They're in the Seattle 4 bracket. So
that's not quite what you want then. I'm not saying you should be scared of them. I mean, it's kind of I can't think what movie it is now, but I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me kind of thing. Like, you're locked in with South Carolina. It's not the other way around, but that is the only team. Go ahead.
If it plays out the way that this is, it does seem like the Greenville 1 and Seattle 4 bracket, which is led by South Carolina and Stanford, whoever gets out of that probably wins the national title.
I agree with that.
But the hardest overall bracket may be the Greenville 2 bracket, because you got Indiana, UConn, Notre Dame, UCLA all in that bracket.
That would be like quite a regional. Good grief.
Yeah, that's the eat itself alive bracket for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. And that's, I guess, yeah, UConn's the other one you got to watch where they end up, because I know they want a second shot at South Carolina. They're obviously healthier than they were when that game happened a month ago. And they're, as you'd expect of a UConn team, playing their best basketball of the season when the calendar flips to March.
So yeah, we'll get a full bracket on Sunday. We'll start to break down those matchups next week on GamecocksGroup.com. For the record, right now, it looks like the opening game would be a playing game between Chattanooga and Southeast Louisiana. So that's who they have South Carolina matched up against right now, but subject to change by Sunday night.
It'll be 2 conference champs from very small leagues playing in Columbia 2 days before the tournament starts. Is what that's going to be.
Yep. So if you are in the upstate, enjoy some women's basketball coming up to you. You just got to enjoy some women's basketball, and we'll continue to. It seems like Greenville's Greenville's really becoming a hub for it.
Yeah, you're from Greenville, right? Originally
from the area. Yeah.
I had a good time this weekend. That's a nice little town. I know that Main Street district's changed a lot in the last few years. But I had a good time.
No, yeah. Every time I go back, there's a new giant building there. All right, let's talk a little baseball. I think that I told you when you kind of came on that our subscribers are really, really into baseball, more than perhaps you might expect initially, but got a win over Clemson. That rounds out the Big Four sweep of the Palmetto series. So South Carolina won during this academic year, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and now baseball. Got 2 out of 3, like you said. The only, I guess, concern was Will Sanders looked a little shaky, but that's going to happen sometimes. I expect him to get back into form, and most of his series to start off on a better foot than that. I think one of your takeaways, though, is that you kind of have four worthy starters for the weekend. On Sunday, obviously, you had Jack Mahoney, who was coming back from an injury. Out there, he was fine. He pitched 4 innings, I believe. And then you had, what's his name? Came off the bench.
James Hicks.
James Hicks, sorry. Yeah. James Hicks came off the bench and was like lights out once he came in. And Steven Anderson, actually, who covers baseball and has some connections within the program, did mention that he thinks it's possible before the season's over that those roles switch even.
I can see that. I mean, Hicks has been better so far this year. I mean, Mahoney was good his first start, but Hicks, was it 5 innings relief score? Yeah, I mean, he's been better.
Yeah. But it's a good problem to have. I think you have 4 SEC caliber weekend starters. You also have the Eli's who have been holding it down.
Both pitched last night in the midweek, 8 innings total, 1 run allowed, 10 strikeouts and no walks between them.
Yeah, so there's no doubt that the pitching depth is there. Let's hope that they can stay healthy, which obviously was the problem that they ran into last year. The pitching wasn't really the problem very much last year. I mean, you could argue that the bullpen was a little thin, but also the bullpen didn't get very, very much help from the hitting, which we've discussed, finished last in the SEC and everything last year pretty much. So now that they've faced a true test, although we talked about how Clemson was struggling a bit going into the series, is this team good? Like, they only have 1 loss in the season, but the schedule obviously has not been much of a gauntlet to this point. And it's not getting harder this weekend as they take on Bethune-Cookman in a 3-game series. No offense to Bethune-Cookman, but so yeah, what are your thoughts on this team so far? Like, how do you see them stacking up with the rest of the SEC?
That's the whole question, isn't it? That's that series this weekend is the last week of non-conference play, and then we're 9 days away from the first SEC game now. I can see a way they're good, put it that way. I'm not ready to say that outright yet. I'm not ready to say this team's going to win 17, 18 SEC games and host. Not ready to do that. Everything comes back to pitching. I mean, we talked about that before. You're talking about Sanders, Hall, Mahoney, Hicks, Jones, Jerzenbeck. You got Matthew Becker. We haven't even mentioned yet. He's starting tonight. That second midweek is pitching the weekends. Cade Austin's been your shutdown reliever. That's 8 guys right there that I think most teams would take, and guys who have started games before.
Veach has looked nice, and
Chris Veach, he's been the closer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Had to save on Saturday, that middle Clemson game. You're 8-9 deep out there, and that's going to keep you in almost every game you play. That's kind of my main take, and that's why I think this team's still. I would lean yes, this team's good. I think clearly better than last year. I don't think it's even a question at this point. It just comes down to, can you score enough runs without the homer? Is still my question. I thought you saw some good signs of that. I know they hit 4 homers last night, but you saw some good signs. That 6th inning last night, they were up 2-1, scored 3 runs, kind of put it away, all without a homer. Started with Wimmer, had a good at bat. I wrote a little bit about that on the website if you had read my gamer from last night. If they can find ways to hit for average a little more, score without a homer, I think this team can be very good. But you need the pitching to stay healthy too.
Yeah, it's still been a little bit feast or famine for sure with the hitting, which was something that they experienced a lot last year as well. To me, I think the hitting's a little bit better, and that's all you really needed. I think the pitching was already pretty good, and now you could classify it as great. So those 2 things combined, I think, probably get you tournament worthy, hopefully. Yeah.
I mean, it's Sundays, really. That's kind of what I was talking about with someone else yesterday. You're going to win a little more Sundays than you lose, I think, because you're going to be able to roll guys in the 3rd game of a series that other teams just can't roll out there on the mound.
Yeah, and it was pretty apparent this past weekend that Clemson was grasping for straws on Sunday with what they were doing pitching-wise. I think they had 8 pitchers or 7.
That won't be the last time this year you see South Carolina do that to someone in a Sunday game.
Yeah. And South Carolina only had to use 2. Maybe they brought in someone in the last
inning.
It
was just Mahoney and Hicks, yeah.
I covered that game, but it is a blur a little bit.
It's been a long weekend.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you ask me right now, easy agree that they are better than last year. And are they the number 20 team in the country, which is what they were ranked this last poll? That sounds about right to me, honestly. That seems like right in the wheelhouse. I know some people are complaining that Florida State jumped up and then got beaten
Lost the
back
series,
down, like whatever. Yeah. And that South Carolina hasn't seemed to get that same respect at this point, but also it's like they really haven't played anyone.
Yep.
It's really
You've
hard to
got,
tell.
and then just scheduling wise, just for people who don't know, you've got USC Upstate tonight, midweek, 6:30 game. You've got 3 this weekend with Bethune-Cookman. You've got Presbyterian in the midweek next Tuesday back in Columbia. They're 11-0 at home, by the way. We haven't mentioned that. They're taking care of business at home. And then after Presbyterian next Tuesday, a week from Friday, SEC play starts with a 3-game series at Georgia. So you've got one more week to figure out whatever you still want to figure out before the SEC gauntlet starts.
Yeah. And I mean, we're kind of nitpicking because we're just trying to
have conversation.
Figure out what this team is. But at the end of the day, you have to give them credit. I mean,
they're winning. And that's especially, I said this to someone last night coming out. They've played 4 midweeks this year so far, and they've all been uneventful. And that's the best thing you can say about a midweek and what they weren't doing last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that ultimately is what kept them out of the tournament last year, because they were right on that bubble as far as
they probably needed 1 or 2 more SEC wins.
Yeah, it was right there. Definitely would have helped to win at least 1 or 2.
Right now, they're 4-0 in midweeks, and you can't do better than 4-0.
There it is.
Nobody breaks it down like me.
So obviously we'll have a lot more baseball in the coming weeks. We will have some coverage on men's basketball tonight, and as far as they see fit to go. But obviously, unless they win the whole tournament, their season will end whenever they lose in the SEC tournament this week. And then the women have the long road ahead, and should be
they're fun. Hoping 6 games in the course of 3 weeks, starting next Friday or Saturday at Colonial Life Arena.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that would make them, if they completed the road, that would make them the 5th program ever to go undefeated, and obviously it would be the first time South Carolina has ever gone undefeated. So
that was the first undefeated regular season even this year.
Right. So this team has already passed several historic milestones, but they do have that one big one left.
6 more games to win. That's kind of the message I got from the locker room from everybody on Sunday, which again, if you're an inside subscriber, you can see quotes from basically the whole roster after the title.
You can check that all out on GamecocksScoop.com. We'll be back next week to start to preview a known opponent at that point, and more baseball coverage and spring football getting kicked off next Thursday.
Tuesday's first spring practice. Monday's pro day.
Next Tuesday. So check that out on GamecocksScoop.com. Until next time, we'll see you.